a quick follow-up on this coffee station build. This started off with two different designs that I did in SketchUp. A more traditional design that you see here. Then I came up with a second design, which is this mid-century modern design that you see here. I still hope to make that first design someday, just because there's some elements in there that I would like to teach. I don't know what I would do with it. There would be no place for it in my house, so I would have to make it and then try to sell it, and I've never done that before, so that will be a fun experience. For the white part of the cabinet, I originally wanted to use melamine, and I got a lot of feedback on that, like, please don't use that, please don't use that. But I used to have this piece of furniture. It was a handmade entertainment center, and it had this really hard, textury melamine on there, and that's what I envisioned for this. And I could not find anything locally except for like this really papery, crappy stuff at Menards. So my second choice was to use Baltic birch plywood and then paint it. So when painting that, I started off with a gray primer, and turns out I didn't really need to do that because the paint that I got for it had primer in it. I tried spray painting at first, but I didn't like the results that I was getting. I wasn't getting very good coverage, and it was kind of splattery. I don't know the right term for it. So then I bought a can of the same paint, Painter's Touch White by Rust-Oleum, and I was brushing it on, and it was leaving brush strokes. Still not happy. So then I ended up using a roller, and I really liked that. It left a slight texture on there, and the coverage was great, so I could paint the whole thing very quickly in just a couple of coats. And then on top of that, I used spray lacquer to protect it because there's going to be spills and water and coffee on here. And I think spray lacquer is going to hold up fine over the years. If it wears down, I can easily just spray on another coat. I chose to go with the satin. I don't like shiny things, so the satin coat for that. I assembled the cabinet with the Festool Domino. It was my first time using it, and that thing is a pleasure to work with. I can see myself using that Festool a lot in future projects. Even though I used the Festool Domino for the case, it may have been even easier to use pocket holes for the assembly. I could also use dowel joinery as well. Because the plywood was slightly warped, I had a little bit of issue getting the cabinet together, and while hammering it together, I got a crack in the side. And that was totally my fault. I was being a little rough with it. But I put a little bit of wood putty in there, sanded it down, painted over it, can't even see it. And then this was also my first time using edge banding around the outside of the case, and that was pretty easy. It was just snip it, iron it on, sand it down. That was pretty fun and easy. For the edges, I wanted to show separation of the different pieces of plywood. So in between coats of paint, I would actually take my knife and kind of carve out the little groove in there, and I wanted those lines to be visible. And it was just adding to the overall design of the piece because there's vertical lines and horizontal lines, and I wanted to emphasize all of that. The legs were also joined with the Festool Domino. Now there's a lot of pressure on that angle, so if this case were any bigger, I would probably use a more traditional mortise and tenon. I'm pretty sure pocket holes would not hold all that pressure, and I used 2 dominoes in each joint, and it's pretty darn sturdy. I think that's going to hold up just fine for many years. So if this cabinet were any heavier and more weight on there, I would probably use a traditional mortise and tenon on there for a very strong joint. But for this cabinet, the domino works great. You could probably also use any kind of loose tenon or dowel on there, and that would be just fine. Now I cleaned up the finished legs on the table saw to make sure they were flat and level, and this is a technique on the table saw I've never done before. I used a scrap piece of wood to register it against the fence, and then this against that flat piece of wood. I said in the video this is more of an advanced cut. The micro jig gripper actually made this really easy to do and very safe because it's holding everything down and to the fence. The doors and drawer are made from 1/2-inch walnut plywood. It was really hard to find hinges for 1/2-inch thick doors. There are all kinds of hinges that you can use for 3/4-inch doors. So if you're building this and you want a particular type of hinge, you might want to go with thicker doors. And the reason you have more options is there's hinges that wrap around kind of like the back of the door. There's also ones that you mortise out a hole and the hinge fits in there. And that mortise that you need is a 1/2 inch deep. And these doors are a 1/2 inch, so obviously that would not work. But these hinges actually worked out great. I'm very happy with them. There is no adjustment with them. So when you put them on there, you are stuck with that. You can't put them on there and then adjust for different gaps. So with a 3/4 inch thick door, you have a lot more options. All of the walnut pieces, the plywood and the solid wood, they're all finished with boiled linseed oil with a couple coats of spray lacquer over top of that. Once again, satin, as I don't like shiny. The drawer slides are actually underneath the drawer instead of on the sides, and that was a mistake. I made the drawer a little too wide and there wasn't enough room for the slides. And it was one of those happy accidents because now that they're underneath, you don't see them on the side, and I actually like that. And it works just great. It can hold a lot of weight. So in the video, I show an extra piece being glued onto the bottom of the drawer, and that's why, because I needed to mount those slides onto that piece. There is a back on here, but I only have the back on the actual cabinet part. There is no back for the drawer, and that is so I can mount the power strip in the back here and kind of have it hidden. I actually can't see light leaking through here, so that is working out well for me. Overall, I am very happy with the way it came out. There's not too many design changes that I would make. There are plans available for this at the link down below, and you can also watch a build video of this. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Be safe, stay passionate, and make something.